Today I will be breaking down The Lean Startup. It's one of the biggest go-to books for all of the startups and business people that everyone is telling you to read. So I'm just here to break down, basically some of the largest bullet points that I think you could get out of it. One, you need to build things that people want. You can't, no matter how hard you want something to work, if people aren't willing to buy it and purchase it repeatedly, a lot of the times you're not going to have a market that's going to work. And how do you figure out if something's going to work right now? Use the scientific method by seeing what's working and what's not working, and only do the things that work and don't do the things that don't work. And you only can find that out is if you track it and you have actual traceable, trackable results. So in anything you're doing, you need to make sure that you're having actual results, not just fake results. Next, you're going to be able to shift and move with the market. You need to be able to capitalize on emerging technologies that your competition is not going to be able to. Instagram actually started off as an app that you could basically go and reserve your seat without actually being there. It was an online app on your phone that you could go and check in on restaurants. They had people interact with it, and then they ended up seeing, oh wow, no one is using Instagram for this purpose. So then they needed to go and basically say, oh, people really like this photo feature, we should center our company around that instead of what we want it to be. So by doing all of this stuff, it was able for them to actually find their market and actually what their technology and what their services actually do, not what they wanted it to do. That's another really big part of the book. Next, you really want to define the goals of success. What does success actually look like? Do you want to be $1 billion company? Do you want to be a $100,000 company? What are the definable goals of success that you want to implement into your company and into your business? You need to make sure that you actually are targeting what you want to target and do it well. There's not a lot of people, when I start talking to business owners, that want to make and grow their thing and conquer the world. Most of the people just want to find their market and just capitalize on it. And that's totally fine. I'm not one of those people. I want to go take over the world and all that stuff. But I have to also realize is that if I don't have traceable results long term, that's what I'm going to need to be able to succeed. So you need to be able to put traceable, trackable results in front of you in order to be able to win. And something that is so often missed from this book is that the biggest piece of advice that they say is that nothing matters if you are not launched. It is better to launch with something really terrible than to not launch at all and try to keep pushing it down. You want to have a basic framework, even if you don't have the amount of product you want, or you don't have like the amount of users you want. Even if you're just having 10 or 12 people check out the site every once in a while, that having it up is better than it being in development. Because if it's in development, you're not able to see actually what's working, what's not working. You need to be able to see it in practice and not just in the concept. And that's something that I totally missed in the beginning stages of my company. I thought that I needed to have this full-fledged out thing and be really secretive with everything. But if I basically, then I decided that, after talking with, my co-founder, and all of that stuff, that we really need to get this thing launched and ready to go so I can just start selling and get sales and get revenue, because that's a very critical thing that businesses miss. So launch as early as humanly possible is very, very important. Knowing when to stand your ground and knowing when to pivot and shift and move is a must. It is a must. It is a must, a must. You need to figure out what are things that I can compromise on. What aren't things that I can compromise on, right? Because in the initial stages of my company, I basically was in this mindset that I really needed to get products from China and bring them over and do all that stuff. And I pretty much wasn't doing anything different with that business model. But I had to really realize, what did I actually want to do and what were the actual results that I wanted to be able to see, and how can I implement that into my company? So I had to basically figure out, I was like, hey, big picture, I want to be able to help small businesses sell on the internet, but I need to be able to compromise on the details. That's not going to be helping, businesses in China source their products to the US. That can be literally just me going and finding small local businesses and helping them sell and optimize their markets. So that was what I did. And that's a really big thing that helped me from this book that I actually implemented into my business. The next really big thing is that you want to be able to innovate and invest in future technologies. And this can apply to any business, not just a startup. Once you see that there's an emerging technology that you think could possibly be involved into your business, you want to go put some money into research and development into that side of things. If you're a brick and mortar store, and you've always been a brick and mortar store where you help customers start to finish, your customer experience is so important to you, and you only do that, and you are just focusing on the customer experience, which is great. There's so many companies that don't do that. But what you end up losing is you don't see, hey, the internet is going to be a massive part of what you're trying to do as a company. And if you lose that vision and that sight of, future technologies, such as, imagine if you're the last company to get your business on Google Maps, or you're the last company to put yourself on Ocean Connection, you're going to feel yourself falling behind, and you're going to lose a lot of market share to those first movers. Not even just the first movers, the first or second movers. The people that have seen, hey, I'm seeing all these businesses on my block go and use this software. I need to start using this software as well. So you want to be able to implement on these future technologies and understand them deeply, along with investing and spending money where you need to. Batch similar tasks together. I cannot tell you how often people mess this up. What that means is, like, imagine if I'm trying to go and create content, and I feel like I need to go do this book review, and I need to go start making some advertisements for me. I'm just talking about marketing and business stuff. I'm going to batch all of the content creation I have together, and I'm going to batch these common tasks together. Because when I do that, it's going to increase the efficiency of what I'm doing and the implementation of it, and to be able to implement it properly. So that's a really, really big thing. You want to batch common tasks together. And when you batch common tasks together, you're going to be able to get the most work done, and your team's going to be able to work in the most efficient way. Next big thing is that you want to grow, but you don't want to lose the reason why you started. You don't want to lose your why, because if you grow for the sake of growth, you're going to lose the original reason and vision of why you started. And like, let's take, for example, imagine if Facebook decided that, what, they don't want to be a social media platform anymore because they already did it. And they're like, oh, I just want to go do this other thing. They're going to lose the reason why they started, because the reason why they started was connecting people. And as soon as they stop connecting people, that's where their company starts to go downhill. And that's when you lose market share and lose the company culture. That's what I think has started to happen with Apple for a lot of the time. As soon as they lost Steve Jobs, a lot of their products and stuff has gone downhill. So what they had to be able to do is find ways to go and regroup back to the culture before they started to lose market share. Go back to the reasons why they started. When Apple rebounded, it's because they went back to why they started, by doing crazy stuff. And with the release of the iPhone, iPod, iPad, with those like the iMac and all of those things, that was the massive shift that Apple needed. And lastly, timing. Timing is the number one indicator of what makes a startup successful or a business successful. Being at the right place at the right time. And that is one of the largest things that people miss. There was this really famous TED Talk, not really famous, but there was this guy who basically broke down about, I think it was like 4,000 startups. And he basically looked at what are the commonalities between the businesses that succeeded and the businesses that failed. And, you'd think that it would be something along the lines of they had the best people. They had the MIT, the Stanford guys, they had the Harvard guys, and those Ivy League dudes are the people with all these connections are the ones that are going to win, or all these people with this. And overwhelmingly, that wasn't the case. Timing was the number one indicator of if a business is successful. And then this book, what it talks about is how can you figure out if your timing is right on a technology. And the answer is you have to test. You have to scientifically test and track what your users are doing and what your customers are doing. Because if your customers are only using a certain X amount of your services, you're losing out on a lot of market share. But if they're implementing the things that you want them to, and they're interacting with your product in the way you want them to, and they're doing things in a really good way, that you're on the right track. But if they're like, losing and not doing what you think they're supposed to be doing, you need to take that into account so you can pivot and shift and move and change to best create the best customer experience for your customers and for your, users. And that's what you really, really need, especially as a tech company. But also you can apply these same strategies if, you want to run a insurance agency or a chiropractic office or a lot of these other businesses that a lot of the times you don't think about innovation in how they're doing things. Imagine if you were able to be the first, let's say you're the first insurance agent that was able to do virtual chats instead of having them come into your office and get a sit down, that we're able to sign virtual paperwork and you're the first person to do that, right? Coronavirus would happen and you'd be in such a great spot. And that's the thing, is you have to be able to invest and you have to be able to position yourself at the right place at the right time. And if you don't do that, you're going to lose and you're going to be run out of business because, 1 out of every 10 businesses is the one that succeeds. So you want to make sure that those are the things that you're keeping track of. So thank you guys so much. That has been the Lean Startup. I definitely recommend it. If I'm rating this book, I would personally give it about a 7 out of 10. Only because I think a lot of the times if you try to track too much, you lose sight of emerging technologies that are even outside of your tracking. How did Henry Ford market test to, invent the first car? And that's something that I think this book did not talk enough about. And that's something that I think that if you're a company owner, you need to keep that in mind. For all your market testing and you're seeing what users are doing, a lot of times you're going to be wrong. You are going to be wrong a lot. There is so many famous examples of companies that look at research and then they do everything based off of this research. And then they end up losing because they're so dependent and the consumers don't actually behave the way that they said they would when you surveyed them, when you tested them, and when you did all that stuff. Or also there's this thing in research projects that if you start to actually tell people that they're being watched or their information is being tracked, they're not going to act like they normally would. It's a scientific bias, I believe, is what the actual term is. And that's something that you got to keep in mind as you're tracking things, is that consumers a lot of the time are not going to act the way you want them to act or the way you even think they should act or the way that they said that they would act. How many people said that they would never buy an electric car? I know so many people that have told me they never would buy an electric car, and then you go and sit in a Tesla and you drive it and then you decide that you want to buy this car. And that's something that I think the Lean Startup definitely missed. And that's why I didn't give a higher rating. I think, yes, you need to test. You need to test as a startup. You need to be able to track data and see what's working, what's not working. But you got to be also head in the clouds vision in terms of, how can I do something that's so fucking crazy that no one's going to see it coming and that we're going to be able to gain market share. And that's where you end up getting those 10x results, which is actually going to go into the next book that I'm going to talk about, which is 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. So I appreciate it. I'm going to upload and edit this video right now. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for all the support. I'm going to upload this across all my different platforms. Let me know what books you would like me to read through and recommend and give a little summary of. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day, and I hope everything is doing well.